around you or idle ourselves around you. We will spend quality times in our offices in order to become familiar with the issues and challenges and be able to fashion the way to go.
We're going to work hard, bring the women together, make sure that the people, the orphanage people, those suffering, with this opportunity, they're going to come together. All the women in various states will have a voice.
And I'll hit the ground running with programs that will spur the youth and also bring out their innate potentials. And this, I believe, need to push the state where it ought to be the shortest time possible. Thank you.
The commissioners sworn in include Joyce Luga, Commissioner for Cooperative, Urban and Rural Development; Omale, Commissioner for Power and Transport; Yama Otese, Commissioner for Health and Human Services; Frederick Kiang, Commissioner for Education and Knowledge Management; Ugu Udo, Commissioner for Water Resources, Environment and Climate Change, and others. Mayowa Okwato, TVC News, Makati.
In a bid to end the prolonged leadership crisis rocking the People's Democratic Party (PDP) in Taraba State, Governor Abu Kefas has met with State Executive Committee of the party ahead of the coming National Assembly reruns in the state. Speaking at the meeting, Governor Kefas called on all stakeholders to close ranks and work as a team as they prepare for the election. Correspondent Olabia Denusi found in this report. All right, councillors in Ijebu East local government area of Ogun State have suspended the chairman, Wale Adedayo, for 3 months over allegations of maladministration and financial mismanagement. 7 out of the 11 councillors were alleged to have signed a letter where they claimed that the Legislative Council received various allegations on the need to investigate and direct Adedayo to appear at its next sitting on Thursday, 14th September. 15 allegations were leveled against the suspended chairman, and he's expected to defend the allegations. The councillors accused him of withdrawing 4 million naira from the local government account for empowerment in 2022, which never took place. A few days ago, Wale Adedayo accused Governor Dapo Abiodun of diversion of local government funds, but joined other local government chairmen the next day to apologize to the governor for wrong accusations. In a bid to end the prolonged leadership crisis rocking the People's Democratic Party (PDP) in Taraba State, Governor Abu Kefas has met with State Executive Committee of the party ahead of the coming National Assembly reruns in the state. Speaking at the meeting, Governor Kefas called on all stakeholders to close ranks and work as a team as they prepare for the election. Correspondent Olabia Denusi found in this report.
Few weeks, there had been a back and forth between the government and the opposition over whether Governor Ali sent his list of commissioner nominees to the State House of Assembly on time. This inauguration of cabinet members therefore marks a milestone in Governor Ali's government's efforts.
Let's take a short break, and when we return, it will be time to speak with our guest of the day, who is a former commissioner in Delta State Oil Producing Area Development Commission and public political affairs analyst Kenny Okolubo, for discussion on the task before new Minister of Niger Delta Affairs. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Thanks a lot for staying with us. This is Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to our interview with the guest of the day. I'm joined by a former commissioner in Delta State Oil Producing Area Development Commission and public political affairs analyst Kenny Okolubo for discussion of the task before new Minister of Niger Delta Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us, Kenny. It's so good to see you again.
It's always my pleasure.
Let's begin with the appointment of a new Minister of Niger Delta Affairs. Tell us your view about it.
Well, first of all, there was this apprehension initially that President Tinubu wasn't going to appoint a minister for the Niger Delta. And when the initial list of portfolios were announced,
against the 45 ministers. There was none for the Niger Delta. But that was dispelled when the minister was appointed. I don't personally know the minister, Momo, but I have read about him, and he comes with a very huge experience. From what I can see, he has been a councillor, he has been a chairman of a local government area, and he's been a member of the House of Reps, 2 times member of the House of Reps. So you don't expect such a person not to perform because he comes with huge experience. But the task before him is quite enormous because the good thing was that the immediate past minister of Niger Delta before the last one was the Senate president. And he knows the nitty-gritty of what has gone on in the Ministry of Niger Delta. And the funding issues, which has always been an issue in the Niger Delta, is going to be one of the biggest tasks that the Minister of Niger Delta is going to face. Remember that there was a time they had to drop 345 projects just to raise 10 billion in the budget for the East-West route. And that same East-West route we're talking about is still not completed, with all the funds that were committed, and some of those funds were taken away from the ministry, according to Akpabio, which he later revealed that was what some of the frustrations he faced when he was the minister of Niger Delta. Some didn't know about this as at that time until when he decided to speak out. And again, you have the NDDC, which is the biggest commission, I'll tell you, in Nigeria today, because everybody wants to know what is happening in the NDDC. This very big interventionist is an agency, has been one that has been seen to have been a cesspool of corruption. And a lot of people have kicked against a lot of the sharp practices that have gone on in the time past in the NDDC, which was what necessitated a forensic audit. And if you also cast your mind back, this forensic audit report was submitted by Akpabio as then to the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation. But nothing has been done about this forensic audit. So one of the things that the Minister of Niger Delta will need to do before he sets an agenda for this new board that has just been announced by the President is to, first of all, see to the release of that report that was supervised by Akpabio on the forensic examination of the projects that have been carried out in the Niger Delta from inception. And particularly, it is close scrutiny to the lapses that have occurred and to the recommendations that have been done by these consultants, who a lot of money were committed to carry out this forensic report.
So, Sir Kenny, still talking about the ministry, I mean, it was thought that the ministry had finally been scrapped. Was it right to bring it back? Did you get my question, Sir Kenny? All right, let me repeat myself. It was thought that the ministry had finally been scrapped. So I'm asking, was it right to bring it back?
Oh, the best thing that the president did was to bring back, if it was actually, I don't think maybe it could have been rumor, but the best thing the president did was to immediately reverse himself if that was what was done. Because you see, the Niger Delta ministry covers 9 states. Most people just think it's the 6 states of the South-South. You'll also know that Abia, Imo, and Ondo are also part of the Niger Delta because they are covered by the NDDC, they are oil producing states. So the truth about it is, those who did not look at it from that prism were just thinking about the 6 states of the South-South. And it is obvious that the Ministry of Niger Delta, why it was created, was to actually take care of the geese that lays the golden egg, and to go up and to correct those imbalances that have occurred in these areas, for those areas that have produced oil, and this oil is the mainstay of the nation's economy. Because if you look at it now, every commissioner of finance would always look forward to the meetings from Abuja before they have their FAC funded. And it is mainly the monies that are being gotten from petroleum, which are products that are gotten from those 6 states and the other 3 states I have mentioned, the 9 states, that make up those revenues that is taking care of the other 36 states. IGR is negligible in a lot of other states, you must agree.
So there are those who have this strong opinion that the ministry had not lived up to expectation and that the NDDC should revert to the presidency. What do you think?
I don't think it's about the ministry not living up to expectation. For example, I remember there was a lamentation by Akpabio that 359 billion has been spent on the
Kenya, are you there? All right, I've been speaking with a former commissioner in...
Not perfect. But the truth is, it is the funding that has been the problem of the Ministry of Niger Delta. It has not been properly funded. It's not like also NDDC. They tell you that 3%, which is supposed to come from the oil, the international oil companies, are not actually paid by those multinationals, which is supposed to be 3% of their annual profits, are supposed to be returned back to the NDDC. And the federal government too owes the NDDC a whole lot of money, even though, of course, we have also seen that, and that a lot of the funds of the NDDC has been mismanaged. But that is not to say that the underfunding of the NDDC has not been a problem, and the Ministry of Niger Delta as it is. So if Momo is going to succeed, he has to think outside the box. He has to also have a good relationship with the Senate President, who has also been one who has occupied that office, to be able to fund, apart from having funds from the budget, to also be able to get funds, maybe extra budgetary provisions for the Ministry of Niger Delta, for him to be able to make an impact, because these states are very key states, and the underdevelopment in these regions are very huge that you cannot ignore.
All right, so apart from funding, I mean, since his appointment as minister, there have been several talks about the key issues, challenges, crises facing the Niger Delta region. How will you describe the challenges ahead of the minister?
Well, the first challenge he was going to face should have been the issue of the NDDC. Now, the NDDC has a board which has just been named. If you look at that board, it's made up of a lot of people with a lot of experience. Though for me, I'm from Delta State and I come from the Indokwa region, which is oil producing, and we have a whole lot of gas in terms of what we contribute to the nation's economy. I would have been most delighted if the representative from Delta was from Ndokwa region. But the representative that has come from from Delta is someone, I'm using Delta as a case study, is someone who was a former speaker of the state. And the chairman of the board, which is Delta Stud, happens to be someone who comes with very rich experience. He was he was a commissioner in Delta State, and also a secretary to the government of Delta State. So what I expect Momo to do at this point is to develop a synergy, because even though the board is supposed to act as a check and balance to the NDDC happens to be the most important commission under the Ministry of Niger Delta. So that challenge that has always been there, where there has been no synergy between the board and the minister. We remember the infighting that happened not too long ago between the board, where the managing director was accused of insubordination by Akpabio and every other things that have gone on. There must be a synergy now between this board, the NDDC board, and the minister. And so in such a way that even though the board is supposed to also act as a check and balance to the excesses of the managing director, who is the chief accounting officer of the NDDC, and the other executive directors like the one of finance and the one of project, the minister should be able to now carry out his oversight, because the board stops at his table. If it succeeds, if it fails, it's going to be, the blame is going to come on Abubakar Momo. The board stops at his table to fashion out a working arrangement where it will be seen that the NDDC, which has defied maybe so to say most of the solutions that they've tried to apply, will now be seen as one that has become a development commission. Because it's not by beginning projects. It is the ability to be able to fund those projects, start those projects, and complete those projects so that it can have impact on the people. And you know, there's this thing called the bottom to the top approach. You don't just sit in the comfort of your zone and decide what you do for the people of the Niger Delta. You must also have a synergy with the governors, the 9 governors of the Niger Delta, so that you don't repeat projects. My experience when I was a commissioner in Desopadek was that there were projects that usually could overlap between even just the small Desopadek and NDDC. And some people try to carry out sharp practices where they will put a project in in the Sopadek and also put a project in the NDDC. If not for some very close scrutiny, some of us at that time would have fallen prey to people collecting funds from both the Sopadek and both NDDC for one project. So those challenges are things that he should be able to nip in the bud, having the right people to work with him.
So talking about the issue of neglect, I mean, arguably, the Niger Delta region has faced years of neglect. Which area will you advise the minister to start from?
I will first of all advise him to start with the East-West Road. He will have his name written in gold if he can complete the East-West Road and, actually defeat that, will I say, monster or that, that thing that has stopped that East-West Road from being completed. If he is able to get the funding and complete the East-West Road, that will be the first hurdle that he would have crossed. Then again, the most neglected areas are most of these rural areas that do not have basic access to medical facilities. And a lot of these things are also concepts that have been drawn by the NDDC, but some of these funds are mismanaged, just like what we did see in the case of when there was Ebola and some other diseases that were spread across, and it seems to have been abused at that material point in time. So you should be able to carry out these health medical intervention programs in most of these rural communities in the Niger Delta area. And critical to it is, if that signage I keep saying is done with the state government, they will be able to tell the areas where the state governments have not been able to intervene, and schools will now be actually reconstructed in all those areas where we'll find our children sitting on the bare floor and even not having classrooms at all for them to study. So education and health and the East-West Road, and especially making the NDDC to succeed, are some of the key areas the minister must make his priority.
But will the East-West Road ever be completed from the look of things?
That's why I said that the only way he can complete the East-West Road is to sit with the Senate President. The Senate President will help him. The luck he has is that the Senate President is from the same party and has been the Minister of Niger Delta. So there is nothing you are going to tell Akpabio about the ministry. He already knows what the challenges are. So if the Senate President would have lamented when he was a minister that he had to drop 345 projects, you know what 345 projects is? Just because he wants the East-West roads to be completed, but just the mere 10 billion naira. People will hear 10 billion and think it's a lot of money. But when it comes to road construction, 10 billion naira is a drop in the ocean. Because we're talking about a terrain that is not like the usual terrain you find. You have areas that are swampy, you have areas that you have to carry out reclamation, you have areas that you have to do a lot of sand filling. So if he's able to sit with Akpabio and, lobby Akpabio to be able to fund that East-West road, he can finish that East-West road in 9 months if the funds are there, I believe.
So still based on this issue of neglect, I mean, some riverine communities in Delta State are advocating for the creation of Coastal Area Development Agency because of non-presence of government projects in the coastal areas. Is this the solution?
Yes, I think that will go a long way. But if the NDDC is properly funded, like for example, I come from Ndokwa Nation, like I told you, there's an area you find in Ndokwa East that you go on, you can't access it by land. You have to go by speedboat. And even by speedboat is 1 hour. It's a place called Onya. And you just get there, you wonder how government presence can reach these coastal areas. These coastal communities are suffering a lot because it's impossible for you to build bridges across each of these coastal communities. But you can build a link bridge that you can now use to create road infrastructure to actually penetrate these coastal communities. But how do you penetrate them when the funds are not there? So if there can be a department created in the NDDC, which is very possible because the law allows them to do such, to take care of those coastal communities, that will be a huge plus for the NDDC and for the minister, who ultimately is a supervisory agent, if I should put it that way, for the commission. And these coastal communities will actually feel the impact of the government. When you get to these coastal communities, you wonder what happens if somebody is having crisis. Many people have died because of that. They don't have ordinary dispensary. Do you understand? Where you can, for example, I'm asthmatic. I remember one of the times I was visiting one of these coastal communities, I didn't have my inhaler. I went into a crisis because I had to it took me time before I could cross the pond to get to the nearest place where I could purchase an inhaler. It wasn't a joke. So you can imagine what happens to the people who live in that area if this kind of things happen. A lot of people will lose their life if you're going to give birth, if you are going to have just not even minor surgery, maybe a seizure at night, or you want your BP drugs, or so many things. So these coastal communities are really suffering, if I may put it that way. So if the Department of Coastal Services is actually created in the maybe not in the NEDC if it's not possible, but by the Ministry of Niger Delta, that would allow you to look at the issue of flooding, for example. IDP camps are going to be created. We already know that the Cameroon dam has been opened. They have warned that all these areas are going to be experience a very high amount of flooding. This should not be stopgap measures that commissions should be set up, emergency commissions should be set up. If they have a coastal department, like you rightly say, these things will not be a process over a long period of time. And they should have to dredge River Niger, because that's another important thing they have to do. They have to dredge River Niger and sanfill most of these coastal communities. Look at Bayelsa, for example. Bayelsa is almost below sea level, most of the communities there.
So, I mean, the president appointed a separate Minister of State for Petroleum and Gas Resources. What's the implication of this for the region and Nigeria?
Well, I think it was wise that he decided to separate petroleum from gas. For example, I told you I come from a community I come from Ndopa West, where there's a community called Opai. They produce 498 megawatts, and it is transmitted to Obosi. It is not even steps down in Ndopa region. Why do I say this? This gas, the huge amount of gas that is found in this Opai region, is what is used in powering the turbines that are provided by Daewoo, and is powered by Ajib. Now, most of these communities that have had gas flaring have been negatively impacted. This gas have not been converted to proper use. You can imagine what you can do with the flared gas that have been wasting over a long period of time. So now that you have a minister of gas, you will have no choice but to concentrate. Already the president has said that CNG, compressed natural gas, has been approved for us to use in our cars in place of petrol, which is almost not affordable at this material time, especially for the downtrodden. Now, with these two ministries separate apart, we can see the Minister of Gas having no choice but to concentrate on these areas of gas that have been flared, converting them to use so that it can end forex for the nation. And the people who have also suffered degradation because of this flared gas will then now have to be taken care of by this ministry. Then for the one of petroleum, of course, it has to do with upstream and downstream. The petroleum ministry will now concentrate more on also the supervisory role of the NNPC. So I think it's a good thing to have separated those two ministries.
So apart from the East-West Road, the region is replete with other abandoned projects. But how can the Niger Delta minister tackle this? Or is it still about funding?
I don't think the minister can do anything without funding. That's the truth. If he has to face realities, he has to think outside the box and said it again. Because all those other challenges you're talking of, he can do nothing about them if he's not funded. You know what most people do not know is that the appropriation bill is a law. You can't go against it. You cannot tell the contractor to move to site when he looks at the budget and sees that there is no fund. Where are you going to pay the contractor from? If you try to raise funds to pay the contractor more than what is in the budget, you have committed an infraction. And so you are liable to have broken the law. So he has to think outside the box to actually do extra budgetary funding apart from the funds, because those funds is going to put for the Ministry of Niger Delta. I'll beg to say that it will not be enough to complete most of these projects that we are talking about. So when you now do extra budgetary funding, coupled with using a lot of IGR, maybe thinking of how you can also do IGR for the ministry, that can also help in cushioning most of the payment for those contractors who have abandoned their projects because of lack of funding.
Well, let's talk about environmental pollution, which is another major challenge in the region. What do you think should be done by the new minister to address this?
Well, you have the ecological funds. Well, environmental pollution has been one that we have paid lip service to. You remember what happened when the former vice president said that they were going to start the cleanup of the Ogoni area. I'm sure you are very well aware of it. We haven't heard much about the cleanup of the Ogoni area, and from all they have suffered over the years from oil pollution. So the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Gas, and Ministry of Petroleum should be able to fashion out a design whereby most of these areas that have suffered so much from pollution. And you see, this pollution we're talking of affects the water. People now are not able to fish, especially for those whose livelihood is only on selling fishes. They are fishermen greatly. Then there are those whose farms have been negatively impacted, so they cannot actually carry out their farming. And in all this, you must be able to carry out a database and an assessment. After doing that assessment, you will now be able to now have a clear idea of those areas that have been greatly impacted that need the attention of these ministries, because they have to have this interrelationship when it comes to environmental pollution.
So do you see this administration making progress on that project?
Well, Henikin Lopobiri, for example, is someone that is very experienced. He's been a speaker of Bielsa. He's more like a waterman, do you understand? He's lived in Bielsa, and we expect him to bring his experience very much in that area. It should not only be in the area of petroleum, he should be able to influence it, because that is also leads a whole lot to pollution. It depends on the individuals also, and that drive that they want to bring in to bear on making it work. That is what can help this administration. But I think the ministers that have been appointed for gas, petroleum, Niger Delta, I don't know much about the Minister of Environment, are equal to the task from their resume so far.
All right, so Kenny, what approach will you advise the new minister to adopt in tackling oil theft and pipeline vandalism?
You know, this oil theft has been quite a huge challenge. You can see that non-state actors seem to be performing a lot better in terms of nipping these thefts in the bud. And even when they sometimes apprehend these oil thieves, they sort of sometimes happen to be tied, very sadly, to the security services. And you see, there's no way you can steal oil if the security services are not compromised. Because most of these oil wells that you go to tap and they steal crude oil from, some are refined products, some are non-refined products, some are AGOs. Most of these products that are stolen are areas that are known to these security agencies. And so by the time these security agencies get themselves compromised and these oils find their way out of the shores of Nigeria, it affects very much our production, which we have seen over a long period of time, and has also affected our income. Instead of 2 million barrels, sometimes it comes to 1.8 million barrels, sometimes it comes to 1.2 million barrels. Sometimes, even though the Brent crude, which is same as Bonny Light, we find that our prices, and we're not able to meet up, even though our Bonny Light is as good as Brent crude because of low production. Even when OPEC increases our quota, we are not able to meet that quota. If the security agencies, just like the president has done by bringing the new chief of staff, the chief of naval staff has a lot on his shoulders to ensure that they actually carry out a holistic rejigging of the Navy, especially for those who are given the responsibility of manning these oil locations, so that we can have those who are true to their jobs and will not compromise. Then we can actually reduce these oil thefts. And maybe the non-state actors will have little or nothing to do at that material point in time. All
right. So, Kenny, let's take a break. I've been speaking with a former commissioner in Delta State Oil Producing Area Development Commission, Public Political Affairs Analyst Kenny Okolubu, tonight to discussing the task before new Minister of Niger Delta Affairs. We'll take a break and I will be right back. Please stay with us.
This Sunday,
she's brave, vivacious, and talented. Toma may be on the wheelchair, but carries an infectious smile and passion that drive her.
I teach the students how to use their part of body to do some artwork.
With her legs, yes, her legs, she's doing the extraordinary to survive and pass a message.
You have to think good about yourself. You have to look beyond your disability.
We bring you the story of Toma Uno, burdened by palsy, yet determined by fate.
The first thing is to identify the peculiarities of children, channel these peculiarities to the things that will make them productive.
That's on Sunday Specials, where great stories live.
It's not a regular show. It's an online interactive session where I will share my views on the everyday issues that cut across politics, security, health, current affairs, governance, and so much more.
Information is power, information is security, information is knowledge. On Labor Lens, we believe that working people around the world have real questions of their own. They want to know how the world of work operates, what it means to the employer of labor, how policies affect workers in the workplace. On Labor Lens, I ensure we engage effectively the organized labor, organized private sector, and government to get out of them information workers are in need of. I am Sharon Ijason, asking questions that make you get sense of the workplace.
Lagos is the most visited state in Africa as the 5th largest economy on the continent. Covering the state and its government is no mean feat, it's a busy beat. We go beyond the curtain of tapes to travel in far into the deep.
I want to thank the Lagos State government for the healthcare facility.
To bring stories that cut across all spectrums.
A greater Lagos shall be ours.
We tell you stories that define our collective well-being as Lagosians. I'm Adedoja Salamadini. I live in Lagos, inside Lagos.
Sometimes it's the story that calls. At other times, the people just want to be heard.
I need students, but I need teachers.
Can't continue like this.
Their voices re-echoing through time itself.
We haven't done anything. If the tide is high, everybody run for safety.
Their tears leave a sweet sour taste for all their demands. A familiar call beckoning for change. In our world, no one expects a disaster to happen. But when it does, we'll be there to x-ray all sides, from the east to the west, north and south. Community Forum will examine the oddities and challenges to economic development, as well as issues yearning for government intervention. Watch fresh episodes of Community Forum on Sundays by 9:30 p.m. only on TVC News.
Doubt and fear doesn't occur at the canvas, it shows in the canvas. It shows the conation of raw earthen material slabbed, stroked and molded at a pace provided by the doubt and fear. Every move way in the struggle of one to the other, merging the past to the present, brushstrokes of colors seen but not known. For when the wailing stops, the pieces settle down in abject beauty erected for a century of a century. Speaking, advocating, protesting as the arts are meant to be.
Kolishashla Mandela was born into the Madiba clan on 18th July 1918. He got involved in politics in 1942 as he helped to form ANC Youth League. He was married to Evelyn Mays and they had 4 children. Mandela was arrested in a countrywide police swoop on 5th December 1956, which led to the 1956 treason trial. Before the end of the treason trial, he wrote to Prime Minister for vote to include a national convention on a non-racial constitution, and failure to adhere would resort to a national strike. In August, he was arrested and charged for leaving the country without a permit and inciting workers to strike. He was convicted and sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. On 9th of October 1963, he was on trial with 10 others for sabotage in what became known as the Revolver trial. On the 11th of June 1964, Mandela and 7 other accused were convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. He was later released from its gates on Sunday, 11th of February 1990, 9 days after the unbanning of the ANC and the PAC. Nelson Mandela never wavered in his devotion to democracy, equality and learning as he immersed himself in official talks to end white minority rule. In 1991, he was elected ANC president to replace his ailing friend, Oliver Tambo. In 1993, he and President F.W. de Klerk jointly won the Nobel Peace Prize, and on 27th April 1994, he voted for the first time in his life. On 10th May, he was inaugurated as South Africa's first democratically elected president. He, however, stepped down in 1999 after one term as president. Despite terrible provocation, he never answered racism with racism. His life is an inspiration to all who are oppressed and deprived, and to all who are opposed to oppression and deprivation. He died at his home in Johannesburg on 5th December 2013.
Every major news story is with many perspectives and layered with different levels of impact.
Hello. What time did this happen? We will be right there.
Thanks a lot for staying with us. This is Politics Tonight, where we dig beyond the headlines. And I've been speaking with a former commissioner in Delta State's Oil Producing Area Development Commission, Public Political Affairs Analyst Sekeni Okulu. And tonight we're discussing the task before new Minister of Niger Delta Affairs. Sekeni, I would like us to focus on the NDDC for the next few minutes. I mean, this is another interventionist agency for Niger Delta development. How do we ensure collaboration between the Commission and the Ministry for Effective Development?
Okay, the truth about it, like I rightly said, is the new board that has been announced by the President has a lot of people with a lot of experience. You look at the chairman of the board, Mr. Chidebia, who was the former Secretary to Government of Delta State. He had a whole lot of managerial experience. He was a former commissioner also in the state. You look at the Oboko, who has not only, at least for the period he has managed NDDC, we really cannot say there is no will, there is no sense or no drive in trying to ensure that the NDDC becomes quite focused. So it behaves on the fact that this board is not, we should not also have the same issues the former board that they have had. Once the Senate resumes, we expect that by, with everything being equal, there should be a speedy clearance of these board members and an inauguration of the board. When the board has been inaugurated, it will now ensure that the NDDC will have a holistic change in their approach. Like I rightly said, we have not used so much of the bottom to top approach. But I believe this board is one that has come to the youth experience. I might not set the template or the agenda for this board, but I have seen those who have been nominated. You really cannot fault them. I use the Delta people as an example earlier. Like I said, the former speaker, though I desired my Ndokwa person had become the person who was appointed. But the former speaker, you cannot fault him being the representative of Delta, and so you also have others who come with a lot of experience. So what I expect those boards to do is to also learn from the mistakes of the former board, and for them to be able to put their name and entrench it in code is to immediately, first of all, start completing abandoned projects. Because the worst thing you can do is when you start your own project and you want to own your project, it's better you complete those that have been abandoned. These abandoned projects will then enable the people to have a sense of belonging. That can now free up funds subsequently for you to embark on your own project.
So why do you think this appointment of new board for NDDC attracted protests in some states?
Can you come again?
Why do you think this appointment of new board for NDDC attracted protests in some states?
Attracted to?
Attracted protests in some states. Why?
Okay, why there's no appointment you will make that there will not be protests. Look at me, for example. I'm talking to you here. You heard me say Ndokwa a couple of times. Much as I have praised the composition of the board, I still desire if someone was taken from my federal constituency, because we have never had a federal appointment and we have never been on the board of NDDC despite our huge contribution to the nation's resources. So if you are hearing me sound like this even when I'm praising the board, that should tell you that how do you expect others to feel? But you see, like I rightly said, there is no appointment that will not come with people protesting. People will always protest. People will always complain. A lot of people will feel, oh, this man was not a member of APC, or even if he was a member of APC, he did not perform enough, he did not put in enough. Look, the issue here should not be just APC. Much as we know that this is an APC government, I think what the president has done is to look at those who can give results, and he brought them on board. So we should not continue to play that politics of only those who are in our party. But being from our...
Sekani, are you there? All right, Sekani, if you can hear me, still talking about collaboration between the Commission and the Ministry for Effective Development. There are arguments about the ministry being a distraction for the NDDC because of unholy interference. Are there really overlapping functions? Sekani, are you there? Can you hear me? All right, I've been speaking with the former commissioner in Delta State Oil Producing Area Development Commission and Public Political Affairs, and this is Sekani Okoliwu. All right, Sekani, so still talking about collaboration between the Commission and the Ministry for Effective Development. There are arguments about the ministry being a distraction for the NDDC because of unholy interference. So I'm asking, are there really overlapping functions?
No, I don't think there are overlapping functions. Like I rightly said, you have a chairman of the board now. The chairman is going to act as a check and balance to the managing director, who is the chief accountant of the commission, the executive directors, projects, and finance. And he's also going to act as a check and balance. The board will act as a check and balance to those who are representative of each state. Don't forget, too, that you have people from the Accountant General's office. You also have some people from the north who are also expected. You have somebody from the Ministry of Finance. You have somebody from the Ministry of Petroleum who are also supposed to be members of the board. And don't forget, most importantly, the Board of Trustees is the 9 governors of the Niger Delta state. So this synergy will be such that I don't think you think it will be a case of the ministry having this overbearance on the NDDC. The board should be check and balance. What I expect the minister to do is to supervise, to ensure that the board is doing the right thing. You know, the minister also has his other areas of duty. Just like I gave you an example, the East-West Road, the areas he has to intervene in the 9 states of the Niger Delta. But that does not mean that it is only the NDDC that the minister has as a parastatal that is always in. So I don't think there are overlapping functions at this material point in time, especially now that you have a board in place.
All right. So you will agree with me that there can be no meaningful development without collaboration with the people. How can this be enhanced in the region?
Yes, the collaboration must be one that has to be done devoid of politics. Like I have said before, the 9 governors of the Niger Delta have to be carried along in each of the states. When you go to the state of the governor and you don't inform them that you're carrying out projects, you rightly use the word overlapping. You find out that you start carrying out overlapping projects, or you start carrying out projects that do not impact on the people.
So you have to carry the governor along. When you carry the governor along, he'll be able to also give an idea of areas where he has challenges, and you'll be able to also find out areas where you have to carry out a development project. Because what the NDDC is supposed to do is to make up for the shortfall of what the oil-producing areas are not able to get from the national treasury. And so that is exactly the basic functions of the NDDC, as much as it's an interventionist agency. So when there is this collaboration, it will make you carry people-oriented projects and enable you to also know what the people want. That is what the collaboration will help you achieve. So when you remove politics out of it, you are certainly going to succeed in each of the states that you are going to visit, which already has a representative on the board. And it is expected that the representative of the board should be able to also tell, even before the visit of the board or the managing director, the areas that need urgent attention of the commission.
So how can the youth be carried along in developing the region?
Can you come again?
How can the youth be carried along in developing the region? Because as we know, youth involvement is also critical.
There's a special advisor. There's a position that is made for the special advisor of youth in the NDDC. And I believe the minister too would also have special advisors. Now, the youth are the most critical people in this area. You understand that most of the youth are unemployed. The statistics before now was 33% of unemployment. And the idle man is the devil's workshop. These youth feel shortchanged. Some of them feel that most of the oil from their area those funds are frittered away and used to develop areas other than their areas. And so there's always agitation. So the special advisor that will be appointed should be one that will be all-encompassing by the NDDC, and also the one that will also oversee the Ministry of Niger Delta to carry and fashion out empowerment programs and training programs that will genuinely look at the youth, if possible, carry out a database in the 9 states and be able to pick them in areas. If it is amnesty, if it is in areas of well-being, if it is in areas of marine technology, if it's even in universities and other places that the youth can function and make them now productive, then those are too backward, or rather are those who are educationally disadvantaged. You cannot carry out empowerment programs to enable them find the means of sustaining themselves other than going into criminal vices and other ventures that will enable the area not develop. Because more importantly, one thing you must accept is when there is security, that is the only way you can have development. And the youth are very genuine when it comes to the issue of security.
All right. Let's talk about the new administration, which is now 3 months in office. How will you describe the journey so far?
Well, for a lot of people who did not think that Bola Tinubu was going to perform, I mean, even his greatest critic would accept that he has set the ball rolling. But the issue of fuel subsidy has made it very difficult for the common man to survive. We must call it spade a spade. Now, a lot of people have also thought that the palliatives have been delayed. But he has put templates in place now, and we now know that 5 billion has been released to each of the states, which has not been done in the past. And the fact that subsidy has been removed has increased, most people do not know this, has increased the FAC allocation for each state. Each state are receiving a whole lot more than they used to receive because of the removal of fuel subsidy. He didn't take that into consideration. He still released 5 billion. So what I believe they should do is to carry out this palliative so that it can reach the masses. Let us not just be getting palliative, because a lot is on the shoulder of the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, and because the register they say they are going to clean, it is not to pay this service to it. It is to ensure that this register is clean, and our fathers, our mothers, our great grandmothers at home get this money that they are supposed to be getting every month, and they are able to feel the impact of the buses that are going to be bought. People are able to enter these buses without paying or subsidized rate. This way, you can tell that there is a genuine cost to see that his agenda.
All right. Thank you so much, Sir Kenny.
Is taking up.
Thank you so much for your brilliant perspective and analysis every time we're calling you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you. I've been speaking with the former commissioner in Delta State Oil Producing Area Development Commission, Public Political Affairs Analyst Sekeni Okolubu. Tonight we focused on the task before new Minister for Niger Delta Affairs. Thank you so much for coming. And thanks a lot for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But the conversation continues from here. Get in touch with us on Twitter at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Good night.
Get in on the action with Betano, your exciting destination for thrilling sports betting. Enjoy an award-winning experience with amazing betting options, cash out, and missions, as well as other features. Join now and get a welcome bonus of up to 100,000 Naira.